The hidden power most men overlook. Let me tell you a story that might sound familiar. There's a truth about power that most men never get taught. Real power isn't about being loud, and real strength isn't always something you can see. A man's influence doesn't come from how much he shows off, but from how much he chooses to keep to himself. Take Zayn, for example. He was the kind of guy who believed that if you loved someone, you gave them everything, every late-night confession, every secret, every scar you'd ever tried to hide. He thought that laying it all out for Aisha, the woman he loved, would make her love him more. And for a while, it worked. She felt special, trusted, needed. But slowly, almost without him noticing, things started to shift. He saw it in her eyes when he admitted the fears that haunted him at 3 a.m. He noticed her pulling away when he confessed how much he couldn't imagine life without her. Zayn thought being open would bind them together forever. But every time he poured himself out, something subtle changed. Her warmth cooled. Her laughter faded. She started testing him, comparing him to other men who didn't flinch when she pushed their buttons. Men who stayed a little mysterious. One night, after a fight that left him alone, staring at the ceiling, Zayn made a promise to himself. Never again. He disappeared for 2 years, not to run away, but to rebuild. He buried himself in old books and quiet study. He dove into ancient Stoic philosophy, modern psychology, and the patterns of human behavior. He watched how men who never begged for approval moved through the world. He learned that silence isn't coldness, it's strategy. That mystery isn't deceit, it's discipline. When Zayn came back, he wasn't the same man. He didn't walk into rooms explaining himself. He didn't hand over his dreams, his fears, or his next move to people who hadn't earned it. And women noticed, not because he was flashy, but because he wasn't. He spoke when he meant it. He loved deeply, but didn't cling. He gave, but never at the cost of his core. If you asked him why women were suddenly drawn to him like iron to a magnet, he'd tell you. A powerful man guards 5 secrets. 5 pieces of himself he never hands over completely. The first secret. His deepest weakness. Every man carries fear. Fear of failing. Fear of being seen as not enough. Fear of losing what he loves. But not every fear is for sharing. There's a place for honest tears and vulnerable moments. But wisdom is knowing when and where. A man who spills his darkest doubts at the wrong time doesn't build trust, he plants seeds of doubt. Zayn learned that the hard way. He still felt fear, but now he carried it like a hidden blade, close, silent, seen only by those who had proven they could hold it without turning it against him. The second secret. His true financial standing. Whether a man has $5 to his name or 5 million, he keeps the full truth tucked away. Not because he's stingy or deceptive, but because he knows love must be for who he is, not for what he can provide. Zayn used to brag about his grind, boast about his savings, and try to impress Aisha with plans for their future. But he realized that when someone knows exactly what you hold, expectations grow like weeds. Gifts become obligations. Generosity turns into a test. Now he keeps the numbers close to his chest, not as a secret to be ashamed of, but as a boundary to protect. If she's there for his essence, she'll stay whether he drives a beat-up truck or a brand new car. If she's there for the life he's building, she'll show it by how she stands beside him, not by counting his wallet. The third secret. His next move. If Zayn learned anything from the Stoics, it's that predictability is the enemy of intrigue. He once told Aisha, every plan he dreamed, up vacations, career changes, even the next text he'd send. But the more she knew, the less curious she became. Mystery keeps attraction alive. It's not about playing games, it's about living in motion. When she can guess your next step, she stops wondering. When she stops wondering, she stops leaning in. Now Zayn moves in silence. He lets his actions speak when they're done, not while they're still cooking. He learned to speak his path only once his feet have walked it. The fourth secret. His emotional dependencies. Still loves deeply. He can sit in a cafe, watch the rain hit the glass, and think of a woman he cares for with a warmth no one can fake. But the difference is this. He never lets his life hinge on whether she stays or goes. A man who makes a woman feel like air, like he can't breathe without her burdens. Her with a responsibility she never asked for. It kills attraction, turns warmth into suffocation. Zayn learned to stand on his own 2 feet, not to prove he didn't care, but to show he can stand whole with or without her. The fifth secret. His full past. Not every scar is a story for someone else to hold. Some things are for your own growth. Some shame is best turned into quiet lessons, not burdens you hand to someone who may one day weaponize it. Zane once confessed everything's mistakes, regrets, the stupid things he did at 19. He thought honesty would erase the past. But people remember details you wish they'd forget. Now he shares what builds trust, not what tests it. He lets the past shape him, not chain him. Zane's life didn't get easier overnight. But the moment he stopped oversharing, stopped proving himself, and started mastering the art of respect, when the respect came, the irony, the less he revealed, the more people leaned in. The quieter he became, the more they listened. He realized a man's power isn't in what he puts on display. It's in what he guards, what he chooses to keep, and it all starts with one decision: to hold your cards when everyone else is playing them face up. Channeling power into purpose. When Zane returned from his 2-year journey of self-mastery, he realized that holding power was only the beginning. The next step was to channel that power into building something real, his niche, his independence, his body, his mind, and his spirit. Building the foundation, discipline in action. Zane started with the basics. His body, he knew that if he couldn't command himself physically, he'd struggle to command himself emotionally. So, he set his alarm before dawn, laced up his shoes, and ran while the world was still asleep. He lifted weights, not for ego, but to remind himself every day that he could push past the urge to quit. As his body grew stronger, so did his mind. He carved out time for reading, not scrolling. He fed his mind with the wisdom of those who came before him: Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, Viktor Frankl. He absorbed lessons on discipline, meaning, suffering, and purpose until these principles became the backbone of his daily life. The power of a mission. Every man needs a mission that transcends validation, something bigger than impressing others, or proving himself to people who aren't even paying attention. For Zane, his niche became his sanctuary. It wasn't about instant gratification. It was about the long game. The kind of work that demands patience and consistency. The kind that doesn't pay off in a week or a month, but transforms you over years. He focused on value-solving problems, building systems, creating something that would serve others, while giving him the independence he desired. He learned that when you give the world something valuable, you never have to chase money or attention. They find you. The shift from oversharing to presence as Zane's life became richer. The urge to overshare faded. He was too busy building to narrate his journey to people who hadn't earned a front row seat. The fear of being alone vanished because he was too occupied to notice loneliness. The need for constant reassurance dissolved because his confidence was anchored in real actions, not borrowed words. Women noticed, but by then, it didn't matter in the way it once did. Zane no longer saw attention as the goal, but as a byproduct of who he had become. When he met someone he genuinely connected with, he didn't try to impress her with stories of who he might be someday. He didn't flex his potential or recite the highlights of his past. Instead, he let her observe who he was in real time: disciplined, focused, kind, calm, and she felt it. The currency of relationships. Presence. Season discovered that presence is the ultimate currency in relationships. Presence means being fully there, undistracted, engaged, and unhurried. In a world addicted to scrolling and seeking, presence is rare and magnetic to the right person. The 5 secrets he kept: his weaknesses, finances, next moves, emotional dependence, and past became easier to hold because he was no longer looking for someone else to fix or judge them. He owned them. He transformed them into fuel. The energy he once wasted explaining himself became energy he used to refine himself. A man's life is his message. If he lives in alignment, he doesn't need to shout about it. His calm is felt in every room he enters. His confidence is seen in the way he walks, the way he shakes hands, the way he listens, instead of waiting to speak. Love without losing yourself. When you hold your power, you stop performing. You start living. In that state, love becomes different. You can love fully and deeply without fear of losing yourself, because your world is already full. A good woman becomes a complement to your life, not the reason for it. That's what true sovereignty looks like. Zane didn't become untouchable by shutting down his emotions. He became untouchable by mastering them, by channeling them into his mission, and by refusing to hand over the keys to his inner world to anyone who hadn't proven they could respect it. The paradox of power. Here's the quiet secret. The less you demand from the world, the more it gives you. The less you need from others, the more they want to give. The less you rely on external validation, the more deeply you can connect. Your strength isn't loud, it doesn't need to be. It is felt, and the world respects a man who respects himself. The next layer: living with peace. But there's another layer most men miss. Once you've built your inner world and your mission, you must learn to live with peace too, enjoy the fruits of your labor, and cultivate gratitude without slipping back into the constant chase. Becoming powerful is only half the journey. Remaining at peace while powerful is what completes it. Zayn learned that once the building phase was underway, the true test wasn't just in discipline, but in knowing how to live with joy, stillness, and presence without letting ambition turn into another form of desperation. A man can become so addicted to progress that he forgets why he wanted freedom in the first place. Savoring the moment, Zayn noticed it first in the small moments, rushing through workouts, meals, and even conversations, all in the name of efficiency. The constant ticking of the mental clock, whispering, "You should be doing more." Even as his niche grew and opportunities expanded, he found himself asking, "For what?" That's when he realized, mastering life isn't just about building, it's about learning to live. To walk slowly through a quiet morning with gratitude, not guilt. To take a deep breath and taste coffee while the sun rises. Feeling the warmth on your face instead of seeing it as a brief pit stop before diving into work. To sit with someone you care about. Truly listen, truly see them, without your mind racing toward the next task. The power of alignment peace is not the absence of ambition, but the presence of alignment with what matters. Zayn started to find pockets of silence in his day, moments where he would step outside barefoot to feel the earth, to reconnect, to remind himself that the point of power is to live, not just to strive. This changed him again. His energy shifted from sharp to steady, from restless to present, from rigid to quietly powerful. People around him felt it, too. Conversations became deeper, richer, because he was fully there, not half present, while plotting his next move. Even in business, people respected him more because they sensed his calm clarity. He didn't need to rush decisions. He didn't operate from scarcity or fear of missing out. He chose what aligned and let go of what did and single quotes t. Presence in relations. It came to women. This shift was profound. Many men can hustle, many can build, but few can be calm while holding that power. Few can sit across from a woman, looking into her eyes, undistracted, unhurried, giving her the gift of presence in a world where everyone is starving for it. Zayn found that when he could truly sit in his own presence, he could hold space for others, too, without judgment, without rushing to fix, without turning every conversation into a transaction. He could listen, really listen. And that presence became more valuable than any status he could project. The gift of peace. Women feel your peace. They feel your restlessness, too. They can sense when you're seeking something from them you haven't found within yourself. They know when your energy is hungry, even if your words are calm. When you become a man at peace with himself, you offer something rare. Safety without control. Love without neediness. Presence without performance. And it doesn't just attract women. It attracts the right people. The right opportunities, the right energy, because the world moves toward a man who is deeply rooted, unbothered by chaos, and clear in his path. Sovereignty in the storm. No matter how much you build, how much peace you cultivate, life will test you. The storms always come: loss, rejection, betrayal, setbacks. These moments don't care how disciplined you are or how much you've grown. They arrive unannounced, shaking the very foundation you've worked so hard to create. The test of true power. Zayn faced his own storms. After his transformation, he opened his heart to someone who seemed aligned, only to discover she was still tethered to her past. The pain returned, the ache in his chest, the urge to explain, to chase, to beg for closure. But this time, Zayn was different. He didn't run from the discomfort. He sat with it, letting the waves of emotion crash over him, but refusing to let them drown him. He cried when he needed to, alone and unashamed, knowing that tears don't make a man weak if they don't control him. Then he breathed. He returned to his mission, to the routines that anchored him, waking up early, training his body, building his niche, even when his heart felt heavy. Because sovereignty isn't built in the comets, proven in the storm. The questions that matter in those moments, Zayn stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and started asking, "Who am I becoming through this?" He realized that storms expose the cracks in your foundation, giving you a chance to reinforce them. They reveal where you're still dependent on others for your worth, where your boundaries are too soft, where you're attached to illusions. Each time he faced a storm, he emerged stronger, softer, and clearer. Stronger, because he knew he could handle whatever came without losing himself. Softer, because he didn't need to armor himself with coldness. He could remain kind without becoming naive. Clearer, because every storm stripped away what no longer belonged in his life. The art of not collapsing. You don't chase storms, but you don't fear them either. You don't perform strength, you embody it by staying grounded when chaos knocks. When a woman tests your resolve with silence, you don't collapse. You don't stop performing, explaining, or abandoning your standards to win her back. You remain still, letting her feel your calm, your absence, your boundaries. When your business fails, or your plans fall apart, you don't declare defeat. You adjust, learn, pivot, and execute again, knowing your mission is bigger than one failed attempt. When people misunderstand you or leave your life, you let them go with grace, knowing your journey is about alignment, not approval. The energy of trust. This trust in yourself creates an energy people feel, a quiet strength that doesn't need validation but invites respect, a warmth that doesn't demand attention but draws the right people, the right opportunities, the right partners into your orbit. Zayn's journey was never about becoming untouchable to love. It was about learning to love with a full heart while remaining sovereign, to give without losing, to feel deeply without clinging, to trust without ignoring red flags, to build with focus, love with depth, and live with presence. Boundaries, not walls. The 5 secrets a man keeps his deepest weaknesses, financial realities, next moves, emotional independence, and his full past aren't walls to keep people out. They're boundaries that protect the kingdom he's building. They allow him to offer his presence to those who earn it, to give love that is free, not transactional, to live with open hands but not an open vault. Living in a You stop living for the approval of others and start living in alignment with your highest self. You become unstoppable, not in a loud, arrogant way, but in a quiet, grounded, unshakable way. You walk into a room and people feel it. You speak and people listen. You love and it's felt as a choice, not a plea. You live and it inspires. The world doesn't need more men chasing validation. It needs more men building themselves, mastering themselves, loving without attachment, and living with purpose. Men who can handle storms and still walk with peace. Men like you, the call to rise. If you feel this message in your chest, know this is your call to rise, to refine, and to live your sovereignty. This is the journey of deep thinking, self-mastery, and conscious living. Sovereignty is not a destination, it's who you become every single day. The quiet magnetism of true presence after the storms, after the rebuilding, after the lessons in sovereignty. Zayn found himself in a new territory, one that most men never reach. It wasn't about chasing, proving, or even building anymore. It was about being. This is where the real magnetism begins, the kind that doesn't need to shout or perform, because it's felt in every room you enter. The aura of a man who knows himself. People talk about energy all the time, but few understand what it really means. Zayn learned that your energy is simply the sum of your intentions, your boundaries, and your presence. When you've done the work, when you've faced your storms, built your mission, and found your peace, your energy changes. You become the calm in the chaos, the steady hand in a world of noise. You don't chase attention. It comes to you, quietly, because people sense your self-respect. You don't need to prove your worth. It's obvious in how you carry yourself. You don't fill silence with words. Your presence is enough. Women, friends, even strangers feel it. They can't always explain it, but they're drawn to it. It's the difference between a man who is searching for something and a man who has found himself. The subtle art of realize that attraction isn't about tricks or tactics. It's about alignment. When you're aligned with your values, your mission, and your peace, you become magnetic to the right people and immune to the wrong ones. You attract women who value depth, not drama. You attract friends who respect your boundaries, not those who drain your energy. You attract opportunities that align with your purpose, not distractions that pull you off course. This is the quiet power of presence. It's not about being the loudest in the room, but about being the most grounded. It's not about having the most impressive story, but about living a life that feels true to you. Living without masks. Most people wear masks at work, in relationships, even when they're alone. Zayn used to do the same, trying to be what others wanted, hiding his true self behind layers of performance. But after everything he'd been through, he realized that the only way to live fully was to drop the masks. He stopped pretending to be unbothered when he was hurt. He stopped acting like he had it all figured out. He stopped hiding his quirks, his passions, his real opinions, and something amazing happened. The more authentic he became, the more deeply he connected with others. The right people leaned in. The wrong ones faded away. The freedom of selective vulnerability didn't become a closed book. He learned the difference between oversharing and selective vulnerability. He could open up, but only to those who had earned his trust. He could share his struggles, but only when it served a purpose, growth, connection, or healing. He didn't use vulnerability as a tool for validation. He didn't hand over his story to anyone who asked. He chose when, where, and with whom to be open. This gave him a sense of freedom he'd never known. He was no longer afraid of being misunderstood, because he understood himself. He was no longer desperate to be seen, because he saw himself clearly. The power of saying no, of the most underrated forms of power, is the ability to say no. Zayn learned that every yes is a no to something else. Every time he agreed to something that didn't align with his values, he betrayed himself a little. So he started saying no firmly, kindly. Unapologetic ally. No to relationships that drained him. No to opportunities that didn't fit his mission. No to habits that pulled him away from his peace. With every no, his yes became more powerful. He had more energy for what mattered. He became a man whose time, attention, and love were valuable not because he withheld them, but because he gave them with intention. The ripple effect. Zayn's transformation didn't just change his life. It changed the lives of those around him. His friends started to notice the difference, not just in how he acted, but in how they felt around him. They felt calmer, more inspired, more at ease. Some asked for advice. Others simply watched, quietly, shifting their own lives in response. Women noticed too. The ones who were looking for a man to fix or save them drifted away. The ones who valued depth, presence, and partnership drew closer. Zayn didn't have to chase or convince. He simply lived, and the right people found him. The legacy of presence. In the end, Zayn realized that the greatest gift he could offer the world wasn't his achievements, his knowledge, or even his love. It was his presence. The ability to be fully there, to listen deeply, to hold space for others without losing himself. This is the legacy of a powerful man, not the secrets he keeps, but the presence he brings. Not the walls he builds, but the boundaries he honors. Not the noise he makes, but the peace he radiates. And that's the quiet magnetism that changes everything. Living the legacy, becoming the man others remember. Zayn's journey wasn't just about personal transformation. It was about creating a legacy, a way of living that leaves a mark long after you've left the room. This final chapter is about what it means to truly embody everything you've learned, to become the kind of man who inspires others, not by what he says, but by how he lives. The power of consistency. The world is full of men who start strong and fade away. Zayn realized that what separates the truly powerful from the rest isn't a single act of greatness, but the quiet daily commitment to his values. Consistency is the foundation of trust, both with yourself and with others. He kept his promises. Even when no one was watching, he showed up for his mission. Even on days when motivation was nowhere to be found, he honored his boundaries, even when it would have been easier to let them slide. This consistency became his reputation. People knew what to expect from him, not because he was rigid, but because he was reliable. In a world of uncertainty, that reliability became his superpower. Teaching by example. Zayn never set out to be a teacher, but his life became a lesson. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers began to notice the way he moved through the world. They saw the peace in his eyes, the strength in his silence, the kindness in his actions. Some asked for advice. Others simply watched, quietly shifting their own lives in response. He learned that the most powerful way to lead is by example. You don't have to preach or persuade. You just have to live in alignment with your values, and the right people will follow. The ripple effect of integrity. Integrity isn't just about honesty. It's about wholeness, being the same person in every room, with every person, in every situation. Zayn's integrity became a magnet for the right people and a filter for the wrong ones. He attracted friends who valued depth and loyalty. He built partnerships based on mutual respect, not convenience. He drew women who were looking for a partner, not a project. The ripple effect was real. As Zayn's circle grew stronger, so did his impact. He realized that every choice he made, every yes, every no, every boundary sent a message to the world about what he stood for. Love as a legacy for Zayn. Love was no longer about possession or validation. It was about partnership, growth, and freedom. He loved deeply, but without attachment. He gave fully, but without losing himself. He supported the women in his life, not by trying to save them, but by standing beside them as an equal. He celebrated their strengths, not just their beauty. He encouraged their dreams, not just their support of his. He listened, really listened, without trying to fix or control. This kind of love left a legacy. The women who shared his life walked away stronger, more confident, more themselves. That, he realized, was the true measure of a man's impact. How many hearts he won, but how many he helped heal and empower. The ongoing journey sovereignty isn't a finish line. It's a daily practice. Zayn knew that there would always be new challenges, new storms, new opportunities to grow. He welcomed them, not as threats, but as invitations to deepen his mastery. He continued to learn, to question, to refine. He stayed open to feedback, to change, to evolution. He remembered that every day was a chance to begin again. Your turn to rise if you followed Zayn's journey. You know that the path isn't easy. It requires courage, discipline, and a willingness to face yourself honestly. But the rewards are profound. Peace, purpose, presence, and the quiet magnetism that draws the right people and opportunities into your life. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be committed to your growth, your mission, your integrity. The world needs more men who are willing to do the work, to hold their power, to love without fear, and to live with intention. This is your invitation, to rise, to refine, to become the man you were meant to be, not for applause, not for validation, but for the legacy you'll leave behind. Because in the end, the most powerful thing you can offer the world is not your secrets, your achievements, or your strength. It's your presence, your wholeness, your unwavering commitment to living a life that matters.